How's it going, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Darius's Garage. We start this episode off on a bit of a sad note because we have sold a car, everyone's favorite, the X5 35D. So yes, I have sold the X5 35D. That is my most popular car on the channel. Funny enough, an opportunity came up to purchase a newer car, a one with some body damage, and my dad loves to do body damage on cars. He loves to fix them. The X5 was causing a couple headaches here and there, and it's continued to cause headaches even for the new owner. I'm so sorry, but that is how those cars are, unfortunately. Now, before I reveal the car, I'm going to give you a hint. How about that? It's a wagon! And a diesel one at that. So I present to you guys my new to me 2015 BMW F31 Touring 328 diesel. This is a alpine white over black interior car, black headliner with sort of lower to middle of the range options, but it does check most of the boxes that I want out of a daily driver car. Of course, as I alluded to just a few moments ago, this car was not in this condition when we got it. It was, when we first bought it, in quite a bit worse shape, as I will now explain.
Yep, we bought this car at a salvage yard with some body damage. We didn't exactly get a steal deal on the car, but if you take into consideration the additional parts that we got with it, I think we did alright. It arrived on a flatbed exactly as described. The damage was pretty minor: broken headlight, damaged bumper, crumpled fender and hood. My dad got to work right away, pulling the fender out back into shape to see if it would be salvageable. He removed the rubble that resembled a headlight to give him extra space to work. And then, with the fender liner banged into shape roughly, he used that as a reference point to straighten out the hood. The fender was definitely past its prime, and was too far gone to reuse. So my dad decided it was best to replace it with one already in the factory body color. He starts with the 3 clips that attach the fender liner to the fender. And with the rocker pulled back, he attempts to take out the first screw. And as the saying goes, first is the worst.
One screw and it's giving me so much aggravation.
This screw put up an impressive fight. The problem was that the screw was rusted into its clip so badly that the clip ripped apart and kept spinning with the screw instead of releasing the screw. The area was tight for a vice grip, and my dad doesn't exactly have the most patience for fiddly hardware as such. So he cut the bad fender as we were throwing it out anyways.
There was one screw here and there is another one here.
And there's that evil little clip. You can see that it's spinning with the screw instead of staying in place. Even with good access and the vice grip, it was still difficult. Eventually, my dad got it off and moved on, and I wasn't there for the process, so I don't even know how he ended up doing it. My cameraman did not capture the moment as my dad probably didn't have the patience to wait for him. Next, we pick up at the top side of the fender, removing the clips and 3 screws. And before we know it, the fender's coming off. There was more screws than that, but of course my dad worked too fast for the cameraman to film. One of which is here, and you can see my dad pulling off the foam insulation to transfer to the new fender. And just look at how much rust was built up at the base of the fender. And here's the other fastener that wasn't filmed when it was being removed. My dad removes the bracket as it was mangled and installs the new fender, starting with the top fasteners. And here we can see how he checks the panel gap. Which quite clearly needs work. With some modification to both the fender and the hood, everything lines up. And now he can install everything that goes on the fender and finish bolting the bottom of the fender to the car. And voila! Now let's fix that bumper. We gotta lift up the car, remove the wheels, and remove everything that's attached to the bumper, like this fender liner. And the screws that are holding the left side of the bumper to the left fender. Then the fog light is disconnected, as well as the wiring harness for the bumper PDC sensors. The fasteners underneath the bumper also need removing. And before we know it, the bumper was removed and put on a bench for repair. Yes, you heard that right. In order to repair this, we needed parts. We found a damaged donor bumper on the scrapyard for 20 bucks, and it was just good enough to provide the pieces we needed. My dad precisely cut out the same part of both bumpers and started plastic welding. To stitch the bumper together, my dad uses metal stitches that melt into the plastic for a strong yet professional repair. You could dare say it even aesthetically looks pleasing.
This looks freaking fantastic.
Sometime later, all the stitches were implanted, and the bumper looked like a bumper again. The damaged bumper would be lonely without another damaged friend, so I got a damaged factory 3 Series headlight to go with it. These headlights are pretty pricey, and I was on a budget. At the time of filming, good used units started around 400 bucks on Marketplace. We got this damaged headlight for just 40 bucks, but there was genuinely a gamble. There was a hole in the housing, and of course, it was left outside in the rain for water to get inside. It was practically a fishbowl when I got my hands on it. But perhaps we could still save it. So we tried. We even sourced a new tab repair kit from BMW, genuine. But this kit proved to be kind of useless without modifying the kit and the headlight. The holes didn't line up, but with enough persuasion, anything is possible.
And then I need to drill it.
Before we knew it, the headlight was bolted up, fully functional, although I do admit it is quite ugly. With the headlight completed, the bumper had to be finished. My dad already primed and prepped the left side, and now it just needed to be painted and cleared. We took care of this off camera, of course, and mounted the bumper back on the car. It's definitely not perfect, but this allowed me to drive the car for the next few months while we assembled something extra special for the car's front end. Part of which we got with the purchase price of the car. But more on this in future videos.
Got it up and running maybe about 2 weeks ago. At this point, I've been driving it around a little bit here and there. And it's been lovely so far, minus a couple of little check engine lights, which are par for the course with these type of vehicles. And now we're gonna get into the pros and cons of this car. The number one thing with this car versus the X5, even though both were diesels, is fuel economy. This car will take 6.5 liters per 100 versus the X5, which I could never really get it anywhere better than 9.5. But in all honesty, 11 was pretty typical for that car. So much better with the F31. The infotainment system on this car is so much newer, so much nicer, and it makes me feel like I'm in the 21st century. The 6-speed auto transmission in the X5 was acceptable. Smooth, non-intrusive, comfortable, got the job done, but the 8-speed in this is so much better. It's even faster, even smoother. Shifts are imperceptible, and because you got 8 ratios, highway speeds, the RPMs are nice and low, fuel efficient, engine runs super quiet. The wood trim in this car is so much better than any E70 X5. Any F30, F31 chassis car has wood trim that's pretty much always intact. I hardly ever see it go bad and start cracking, getting all ugly. But the E70s, for some reason, every single time the wood trim goes bad and it's hideous. Trade off with this car, sticky door handles, disgusting. But that's easily resolvable with some Chinese stuff, readily available pretty much everywhere. Video on that coming soon. One thing that my E70 had, which this vehicle doesn't unfortunately, is heads-up display. That is something that I would love to have. Unfortunately, can't win them all. This car doesn't have that. Another thing that I wish that my F31 had was all the driver assistance package stuff. That would be really nice. The lane keep assist, the blind spot monitoring, and the pre-collision braking system. That'd be really nice to have. Unfortunately, again, can't win them all. This particular model doesn't have that. Another thing that's missing from my particular car are the paddle shifters. Where are those? These are pretty common on the F30s, but the more basic cars like mine didn't get it. Maybe I'll retrofit that though in a future video. Another thing that I wish that this particular car had, a package that my X5 had, is sport seats. These things don't have the adjustable lumbar cushion at the front, and so my knees are sticking up, so it would be nice to have those seats. Video coming soon, by the way. Also, this car doesn't have electric tilt and telescope. It has a manual tilt telescope function, which sucks because if you have multiple people driving the car, every time you gotta push this back and forth. You can't have memory for that. The ground clearance on the F30, F31 isn't as good as the X5. And it will never look as good because It's not the off-road special like the X5 was. Another thing that I wish that this car had, but it doesn't have, is the M Sport Appearance Pack. Unfortunately, again, can't pick everything with used cars, but we have a solution for this, which we'll be retrofitting in future videos. The back seats and cargo area in this car are not nearly as good as they were in the X5. I really got to push my seat forward in order to fit myself back here, and I can take less cargo than in the X5. What's nice about the F30 is that it does at least have comfort access, but it's only on the front doors. On the back, you couldn't even get it. The suspension on this car is remarkably comfortable, especially compared to the X5. That car felt like the tires were made out of wood. The engine note of the E7035D was much more pleasant compared to this. It had a sophisticated tone to it, even though the exhaust didn't sound all that fantastic, but the engine note from the cabin, much better than this. This just sounds like a Passat. One thing that I really love about the F31 versus the E70 is how much smaller the engine is and how much simpler it is really compared to that older M57 engine. You've got 6 injectors in that car versus 4 here. You've got 2 turbos there versus 1 here. This car is meant to fit a 6-cylinder engine, but it's only got a 4 in it. So you can imagine how much more space there is for activities. There's no power steering pump. It seems like this is going to be a much simpler engine to work with. Mind you, it does have the timing chains in the back, but on the 2015 and newer cars, I believe that this was already resolved and your timing chains are less of a concern. The technology has moved on. BMW has learned how to do all the different things with the injectors and the computers and all that stuff to make it more reliable so that you have less weird electronic glitches like I was getting in the E70. This car also takes less oil. For every oil change, I believe this one is 5.2 or 5.3 liters versus the X5, which took 7.2. It doesn't seem like a huge difference, but over time, think about it. You do 3 oil changes, you got yourself a jug that you saved. So, I mean, it's not a bad little thing. For a daily driver, it's going to be cheaper to run this than that M57 N2 engine. So the F31, is it a perfect car? Like hell it is. I don't think any car is when you're working with a budget. However, I think that compared to the E70, it's going to be a better fit for a daily driver for me, which is the main purpose of this car, and it's not to get YouTube clout. So I'm really excited to have it as my daily driver. It's going to be, I hope, cheaper to run on a daily basis. As my dad's F15 proved to me, they're pretty stout cars. The electronics are much better set up than the E-chassis cars. And the mechanical side of things, yeah, people complain about it, but as long as you change your oil semi-regularly with some quality oil, even 10,000 kilometers, even 12,000 kilometers, they should be decent cars to run, and they shouldn't give you too many issues. My dad's car has proven that to me. A couple of my friends' cars have proven that to me, and that car has literally never let him down, even with a bad alternator. He complained about it, and we still drove home 30 kilometers away, and it made it. I trust these cars a lot more than I do the E-chassis cars, and I'm sure a lot of you guys will also agree that as a daily driver, E-chassis cars are just a wee bit on the unreliable and unpredictable side versus the F-chassis cars. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.